that gives us a little bit of example of what it's about. Habakkuk, that's not really even how you say it. That's how we say it, but it's like Habakkuk.
Habakkuk.
Yeah, it's if we don't do
justice.
no. It's derived from the verb haba, embrace.
Sounds like
Thus, his name properly means one who embraces.
sounds like what God's doing today, having the wicked punish the world.
Yep. And that's what we question out a lot. So we'll start reading on here. We'll start in chapter 1, verse 1. The burden which the prophet Habakkuk says. The prophet questions, O Lord, how long shall I cry? And you will not hear. Even cry out to you, violence, and you will not save. Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. This is a strife, a contention arises. Therefore, the law is powerless, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surrenders, and the righteous, therefore providence, judgment proceeds. Right here, he's pleading. He knows what's going to happen. Don't that happen sometimes in our own life? We know something's going to happen. We know somebody wicked's going to do it. But what does the Lord say to him? In verse 5, it says, Look among the nations and watch, but utter astonish. For I work a work in your days, which you would not believe. Thus it were told to you, for indeed I am raising up the Chaldeans, a bitter and hasty nation, which marches through the breadth of the earth, to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgments and their dignity proceeds from themselves. Their horses also are swifter than leopards, and more fierce than even wolves. They charge and charge ahead. Their cavalries come from afar. They fly in eagles that hasten to eat. They all come for violence. Their faces are set like a east wind. They gather captives like sand. They scoff at king, and princes are scorned by them, and deride every stronghold. For they heap up earthen mounds and seize it. Then his mind changes, and he transgresses. He commits offenses ascribed to the power of his God. So he says, these other nations, they come in, he lets them destroy them. And when they do that, they're doing it for their God. But then the prophet says to him in the second question, Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have appointed them for judgment. O rocks, you have marked for correction. You are a pure eye, than to behold evil, and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look at those who deal treacherous, and hold your tongue when these wicked devour a person more righteous than he? Why do you make a man like a fish in the sea, like creeping things that have no rulers over them? They take up all them in with the hooks, and catch them in nets, and gather them in dragnets. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they scatter to their net, and burn incense to the dragons, because to them their share is sustenance, and their food's plentiful. Shall they therefore empty their nets and continue to slay nations with pity? I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart, and watch to see what he will say to me, and what I will answer when I correct them. So he's saying, how can you let a nation this nasty do stuff to us? When we're not that bad. We're not as bad as them. Because when he says they take them all with hooks, back then what they do is put a hook through their lip, and they drag them along with a string. And then some of them, they would actually put them in a net and drag them along. So it's not like he's talking about fishing. This is actually what they did to them. They were nasty. They were coming for money, and they didn't care about anything else. And he's saying, how can you let somebody like that destroy us? And then in chapter 2, verse 2, he says, Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run whom it is, for the vision is yet to be appointed time. But at the end it will speak, and it will not lie. Though it is tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. I will not tarry. Behold the proud, his soul is upright on him, but you shall live by his faith. So God's saying, you're going to live by your faith. You guys are going to have the consequences of what you did, but you're going to live by your faith. And then in verse 5 he says, indeed, because of your transgressions by wine, he is a proud man, and he does not stay at home, because in enlarging his desires is hell, and he's like death that cannot be satisfied. He gathers to himself all nations and heaps up for himself all the people. Will not all these take up proverbs against him, and taunt and riddle against him, and say, woe to him who increases? What is not this? How long? And to him who loads himself with many pledges. Will not your creditors rise up suddenly? Will not you awaken and oppress you? And will not become their bounty? Because you have plundered many nations, all the remnants of the people shall plunder you. Because of man's blood and the violence of the land and city, and all who dwell in it. Woe to him who covet evil gains for his house, that he may set at his nest on high, that they may deliver from the power of disaster, to give shameful counsel to the house, cutting off my people, and sins against my soul. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the timber will answer it. Woe to him who builds a tower with bloodshed, who establishes a city of iniquity. Behold, is not the Lord of hosts, that the people labor to feed the fire, and nations weary themselves in vain. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of glory of the Lord, as the water covers the seas. Woe to him who gives drink to his neighbor, pressing him to your bottle, even to make him drunk, that you may look on his nakedness. You are filled with shame instead of glory. You also drink, and you expose your uncircumcision. The cup of the Lord's right hand will be turned against you, and utter shame will be your glory. For the violence done in Lebanon will cover you, and the plunder of the beast which made them afraid because of man's blood and violence of the land and city, and all who dwell in it. What profit is the image that its makers should crave it, and mold images a teacher of lies? And make a molding shall trust in it, and make mute idols. Woe to whom who says, the wood awakes, to silent stone, arise, I shall teach. Behold, it is overladen with gold and silver, yet there is no breath at all. But the Lord of the holy temple, let the earth keep silent before him. So God says, woe to the wicked. He's going to actually punish them for what they did. But first, he's going to let them punish the Israelites for what they did. He's saying, you guys messed up. You guys are going to have to take your consequences for what you did. But I will have justice for what they're doing to you. I'm going to come back and take care of them. And then in chapter 3, a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet on Shigionoth. O Lord, I have heard you speak and was afraid. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the year. In the midst of the year, make it known. The wrath, remember mercy. God, come from Terrence. The Holy One, Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praises. His brightness was like the light. He had rays flashing from his hands, and there his power was hidden before him. When pestilence and fever followed on his feet, he stood to measure the earth. He looked at startled the nations, and everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills bowed. His ways are everlasting. I saw the tent of cushions in affliction, the curtain of the land of Mouth trembled. O Lord, were you displeased with the rivers? Was your anger against the river? Was your wrath against the sea? that you rode on your horse, your chariots of salvation, your bow was made quite ready. Oath were sworn over your arrows, Salih. You divided the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and trembled. The overflowing of the water passed by. The deep utters in his voice and lifted its hand on high. The sun and the moon stood still their habituation. At the lights of your arrows, they went in shine of your glittery spears. You marched through the land in indignation. You trampled nations in anger. You went forth to salvation your people, the salvation with your anointed. You struck the heads from the house of the wicked by laying bare from foundation the neck, Salih. You thrust through with his arrows the head of his village. They came out like a whirlwind to scatter. They rejoiced with like feasting on the poor and the secret, and walked through the seas with your horses, through the heaps of the great waters. When I heard my body trembling, my lips quivered at the voice. Rottenness entered my bones, and I trembled in myself. I must rave the rest of the day of trouble. When he comes upon the people, he will invade the troops. Through the fig trees may you not blossom, nor the fruit of the vines. Through the labor of the olive may fall, and the fields yield no food. Though the flocks may cut off from the folds, and there be no herds in the stalls. Yet I rejoice in the Lord, I rejoice in the God of my salvation. The Lord is my strength, he will not make my feet like a deer's feet, and he will not make me walk in the high hills. The chief musician with a stringed instrument. So this end part was actually a song part. But he was saying, what God does is going to end up in right. How many of us go through troubled times? And you're wondering, look at that person over there prospering. Look at the money they're making. Look how everything they do works out for them. You know, they're doing evil, they're cheating people. Well, what's going to happen? Right now they might prosper, but God's going to come back and punish them for it. There's going to be a punishment for the end. And we realize when we're doing right, we're not going to get punished for it. Our thing is we're going to come out looking good. But sometimes we go through the hard times and we wonder why. And God puts us through them so he can build us up. And what you see at the end is the product you get. And we need that. At the time, we don't like that. And, you know, like Habakkuk was saying, you're letting somebody wicked take care of us. But what is it for? He had to do it so he could clean up the bad things going on, didn't he? Sometimes we go through hard stuff in our life, and we wonder why God's putting us through it. But sometimes it's to get the bad things we have in our life taken out. Through them hard times is when you grow. And that's when you realize how much you need God. And as Habakkuk reminds us, this is what we have to remember. You know, he says, God, I might not understand what you're doing right now, but I know what you're doing is going to be for the good. And that's what he came to the point finally saying, you know, God, this is where we need to be in our life. I might not like what you're doing at this time, but I know what you're doing is going to come around for your glory. And when we go through them hard times, that's what we have to remember. God's not doing it because he's doing it for our glory, that we glorify him, not for the hurts. So leave here, remember that. Let's go to prayer.